Hello and welcome to our session where we are going to be covering secondaries, what they are, what they cost, why we have them as medical schools, and also cover some of your guys' submissions. So if you haven't had a chance, go in and submit some of your content drafts to see what we think about them, if we can get to all of them. So we will have time at the end for questions and things like that. If you have questions along the way, please feel free to start putting them in chat. To kick us off, make sure that your chat is set to everyone as you are writing and tell us where you are joining us from. And if you are doing secondaries or here to learn about the process for upcoming cycles, just so we have some context and we can kind of tailor and taper our messages. While you guys are doing that, we can introduce ourselves. So my name is Courtney Lewis. I've been with MAPT and MSHQ for a year now. Prior to that, I was a director of admissions at a medical school and held a couple of elected council positions. And I am joined by Verinia and Dina, who are also part of our team. Verinia, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Absolutely. So forgive me, I'm trying to play around with the views. Can you see me on screen right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Verinia Granum. I am an admissions advisor here at MAP/medical school headquarters. I came in 2021. I joined the company. Prior to that, I was an assistant dean in pre-health advising and STEM advising at Hofstra University here in New York City, where I am currently trying to survive the oppressive heat and humidity like 99% of the country is as well. I'm glad to be here helping our students out with some secondaries. And I'll just go ahead and pass it on to Dina.
Yeah. Thank you. Hi, my name is Dina Galini. And like Verinia and Courtney, I am also one of the advisors here at MAP Medical School headquarters. I'm the newest member of the team. I just joined in June, leaving a position as senior MD admissions officer at Stanford School of Medicine. And prior to that, I was assistant director of advising for an SMP program at the Alpert Medical School at Brown University. I worked in pre-health advising at Northeastern University, writing committee letters as well, and have a history in undergrad admissions too. So I've kind of seen students come full cycle, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to be here today.
All right. You guys are very lucky to hear from these wonderful women who have so much experience and wealth of knowledge. So we will try to help you guys. It looks like most of you are kind of in the throes of secondaries right now. So this will be very applicable. Hopefully it'll be helpful to give you some context from an evaluator standpoint, from people who've done evaluations, what we're thinking, why, if you have the right focus, if things need to be reworked, and again, if you have any questions along the way. So let's get going. We have a small presentation like we usually do for the series of workshops where we're just going to cover some of the general bases to get you guys familiar with it. And then we will go into the actual drafts that you guys have and go over those submissions. So the secret to writing, or the secret to answering every secondary. It's so early here in Seattle. Okay, let's
get going.
Okay, so Verinia, do you want to quickly cover kind of the application timeline? It sounds like most people are kind of familiar, but I'm still getting questions with what if I have to go beyond 2 weeks, or you know, what's the next step after this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think at this point we're past, obviously, potentially past submitting your primary. If you have not done so yet, get going. Now's the time to get going. Because as you will see from this process, secondaries are quite overwhelming. So application timeline starts in June when you're submitting May, June, July. We're now towards the end of July. And as you see here, this is when secondaries are really kind of like peaking, right? Mm-hmm. Coming out fast and furious, they're getting released, you're receiving them, and hopefully turning them around within 2 weeks. That's kind of a general rule of thumb. Obviously, follow the school's deadline first. If it's, within 5 days, then make sure you're returning it within 5 days. After that, it's ideal if you can get them within 2 to 3 weeks. And that's where we are at this point. And with, let's say, 20, 25, 30 schools that you potentially applied to, that can get pretty overwhelming very, very quickly. Pretty soon we'll get right into August, September, October, right? That's when we start interview season, potentially all the way through May. And then hopefully starting medical school next year, next summer, next July. But right now we're here, July/August, working on secondaries.
Yeah, and kind of once you get the secondaries in, it's a little bit of up to this point, it's been a hurry up and wait. So you're kind of at the last point of the hurry up. And then after this, there's not going to be many more things that are going to be done or needed to be done. So this is kind of the last big hurdle.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you can get through this, you'll hopefully just be kind of smooth sailing until interviews. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Oops, sorry.
Okay. Crunching the numbers, how many secondaries per school? Pretty straightforward. 3 to 8 prompts. We do know of some schools, and you guys have probably figured out that there are some schools that have more than 8, but typically 3 to 8 prompts. Cost will vary and range, and deadlines generally within 2 weeks is a good turnaround time. Think about every school being incredibly egotistical and wanting you to turn that in, be first choice, see a quick turnaround time. Obviously, professional writing, you don't want to just fling something in. But if they didn't give you a deadline, I think a lot of people would just space it out. I'm going to turn it in 3 to 4 months. So they do have to light a little bit of a fire there. How firmly they hold to the 2 weeks will differ at each school, but that's kind of the ideal timeline there.
Yeah, I see a student, someone raised their hand.
Okay.
We can certainly, do you want to answer now?
Is it applicable to this? You want to put it in the chat?
Okay, that'd be a good idea. So Zach, I think if you raise your hand, please go ahead and ask ahead in the chat. We'll have time for Q&A once we're kind of through the main portion of the webinar. Okay.
Let's keep going.
Sorry, my computer's not responding today. It's the heat. All right. Maybe Dina can kick us off.
Yeah, Dina, you want to pick
Absolutely.
one? Okay.
Sure. So common secondary themes can range from why this school, why medicine, discussing any obstacles or challenges or problems, adversity, diversity, future of any specific specialties. So most schools will ask you if you have any idea what you plan to specialize in one day, any gaps or breaks in your education. So there definitely are a lot of prompts that ask if you are not applying to medical school, as a rising senior in college, to hopefully matriculate right after graduation, and you've taken any gap years and you're a non-traditional student. What did you do during those breaks? And then any healthcare questions, like you discussing your clinical experiences, volunteer work, and just making sure that you understand what healthcare is and what being a physician eventually will be like. These can definitely differ from school to school. Many of these are common themes, but many of the school-specific themes, which I think, I'm sure we have a slide for that too. Do we, Courtney?
Why this school?
Yeah, do we have a slide for any like school-specific ones, or
just around some general themes?
Okay, yeah. So, Okay, so these are the most common themes. They're just broad, and you will see them over and over, in many, many different schools. Some also might ask you specific questions about like outlying communities, and we'll get to more specific prompts in a bit.
Okay. And so Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go
one
ahead.
of the things that you'll potentially start to notice if you haven't already is that these are common questions, as we're saying. And so once you have a good kind of a foundation answer that you've been working on and it really answers the prompt, you can potentially use that, tweaking it appropriately depending on the prompt, but you could potentially use that across different schools, which is a good time saver. Just make sure you're always reading the prompt. So things like diversity, that's a common one, especially given the current situation with the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action. Things like questions about healthcare, questions about breaks in your education or gap years, questions about specialties and things like your particular interests. Those are things that you could you will likely see over and over again in different secondaries.
Yeah. One thing I will say to this is if you have a plug and play answer that you're repurposing, particularly for why this school, make sure that you do not use the wrong name because you forgot to change the name of the school. Please don't do that. It is such a bummer to read, and it happens. It happens. Maybe they'll catch the first time, but then the second time I'm like, oh, okay, well, whoopsie. So if you have these ones that you're kind of Frankensteining together or using multiple times, just make sure that the club name that you're calling out or the school name or things like that are changed and tailored. Triple check your work here, because while it may not keep you out of med school, it has the potential to definitely put a damper on the rest of your application. After you've worked so hard for years, just be careful with this, but repurpose as much as you can. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, we'll move on. All righty. So perfect segue into common mistakes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so not answering the prompt. This actually happens pretty frequently. So why is that problematic, Dina? Like from an evaluator standpoint, why would that be an issue? Or what things are you looking for?
So schools are developing these specific prompts for a reason. They can get all of the common information, right, from the rest of your primary application. They want answers that are specific to their school and to their program, and they want to see that you are a good fit for their program, right? So reading prompts over and over again for thousands and thousands of applications, you want to be told what you want to hear. So when you're not answering the prompt and you're skirting around an issue, or you're blatantly using a general answer that we can, tell that you used for another school, it just doesn't seem like you're invested. And it's just not specific enough to the mission and the values of that institution.
Yeah. Again, going back to the ego of the school, if you are skirting the question that I'm asking, or if you're not tracking, right? This could be a critical thinking issue where I ask you multi-stages or very long-winded question and you're not tracking it. That may be problematic. And so, again, there are reasons, as Dina said, that we ask you these types of questions. We're trying to glean certain information. We're also wanting to make sure that you can track and answer what it is that we're asking you with transparency. So pre-writing, some of you may have done it, some of you may not have. For the few of you who are in here who have not gone into this open cycle and are not currently doing secondaries, on MSHQ website, we have a bank of previous year's secondaries, and we are updating it now with the current secondaries. So you can kind of look at those, kind of get familiar with the types of questions that they're asking. Pre-writing means writing an answer that would fit a prompt to maybe some of the schools that you're applying to. And generally, there's not a huge amount of turnover in secondary. So it would give you an opportunity to at least get some content down and work on through it. And then forgetting to proofread, we kind of talked about, please,
Yeah.
please use Grammarly. Go ahead, Verenia.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Print it out, have someone look at it. It's so easy to skip things or miss things when you've been reading it over and over again. Very important.
Yeah. And one thing that I would find sometimes is in the personal statement and activities, it would be very polished, very clean, pristine writing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get to the secondaries, which had a much shorter turnaround time. And it looks like two different people wrote the responses because it's not the same tone or voice or focus, and one is very sloppy. Don't let that happen to you, right? While you can't take as much time on it, you still want it to have the same level of polish as your master application. If you're just flinging these in just to get content in, it's not going to be good. This is the only school-specific part of the application. You don't just want to shrug these off. They're very important. So make sure that you're doing that. Okay.
Awesome. All right.
Okay. Diversity prompts. So let's read through these really quickly and then ask for some input of kind of how they differ, how you would tackle them. So please respond to only one of the following two prompts for Michigan.
So very important, follow directions here as well. Just one of the two. That's part of the process, reading these instructions very carefully.
Mm-hmm. So do you guys have questions about these? What do you think the focal points are? Any call outs you want to make?
I'm seeing some comments in the chat. Some students have been struggling with working on these. Right, schools want to know about your experiences with and around diversity. And so while they're asking things in different ways, right, you want to reflect on your experiences and make sure that you're answering the prompt at the end of the day. Some are about your own identity. Some are about diversity amongst, other people, not just ethnic diversity or cultural, but, diversity of thought, ideas.
I know that I definitely had some students that I was working with that were a bit intimidated by please describe the missing voice and how you increased representation in medicine, how you were going to have a voice in that area, and what qualified as like a missing voice or what they could use. So can we give them some examples of what a missing voice could be?
I can give an example.
Sure.
No,
you go ahead.
So, okay, we could both give examples. But I, in the past, I worked with a student who attacked a question like this in a way where she felt that addressing gender in medicine, particularly underrepresented females and specific specialties in medicine, was the way to go with this. I guess she had experienced being one of the only females in a lot of her hard science courses and her labs throughout college. Really competitive to get research. She found that there were not a lot of female professors in her chosen major in college, and that voice was missing. And that is what she focused on for a question like this, and highlighted that making a dent, particularly down the road in specialties where women are underrepresented, like cardiology, urology, ortho, that she wanted to be one of those women to make a difference. And she also wanted to help empower women and join organizations in medical school that helped other women get their voice across, and also helping younger girls in STEM to build their confidence in science as they prepare to enter their undergraduate years. So just one example of a kind of a different way to answer the question.
And I'm curious, I mean, were there things in the primary application, if you can recall, that would kind of anchor those type of statements? Like, did she do mentorship before? Was she involved in, you know, mentoring
Yes.
high school girls in
Yes.
STEM and things like that?
Yes, she was involved in a few organizations with her undergraduate institution
Yeah.
that supported women in STEM.
So then as an evaluator, I feel like that gives it some actual gravity, right? If you're just
Yes.
making these call outs out of nowhere, now, obviously you haven't been able to experience everything as a pre-med. We understand that. There are opportunities for growth, but if you're really coming out of left field with something and you have no experience with it before, you may want to at least acknowledge that you are seeking this type of growth, or else I'm going to say you're just telling me what I think I want to hear. You're telling me what you think I want to hear. And so have some grounding points. And then Vernia, do they have to be like the Wake Forest, the top one for Wake Forest?
Mhm.
Does this have to be related to medicine?
Not at all. Not at all. They're saying they want to train physicians with that can work with diverse populations. But they're looking to see what your experiences have been to understand others that are just different from you. Not necessarily how that's going to make you a better doctor, just what you learned about yourself, and how you were able to understand others. That's basically it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to tie it back to medicine. This is actually Zach asks a question in the chat about what exactly falls under URM, underrepresented in medicine. No, it's not just purely ethnicity based. It's underrepresented, as we were just talking about, whether by gender, it could be by just diversity of thought, male, female, LGBT. Like there's a whole umbrella of things that this doesn't just fall under one umbrella, I should say, of just race and ethnicity, different experiences. Okay.
I mean, when it comes down to it, everybody is a unique individual with different experiences and things like that. So how do you feel like you add diversity and value to a collective, or how have you experienced it where you learned from others' diverse experiences, right? So you have some latitude here. Okay.
All right. Should we move on now?
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, so I want to get through this so we can get to submissions. My computer is just not cooperating. There we go. All right. So this is more, these are different prompts now. These are about failure and kind of how these questions are phrased in different ways, whether personal failure or, when you were part of something that failed. What are they looking for here, Courtney or Dina?
Yeah. So for you to answer the prompt, this is not, vulnerability. That's a good way to put it. I would say if somebody's not self-aware enough or self-reflective enough, like everybody has something to work on. Everybody has failed at least at one thing in their life, even if it's, cooking a recipe, right? Anything. Everybody has experienced failure. And so being able to share that in a professional way, and kind of what you took away from it and what you learned, and acknowledge that there has at least been a failure there. So, yeah. Dina, do you have anything?
Yeah, it could also be part of a failure as a group that you really learn from. A lot of students like to talk about a time they failed with a specific, like a longitudinal research project in a lab where experiments had failed, where things went wrong. And it's, what did you learn from that experience? Doesn't necessarily have to be something deeply personal outside of academics. But moving on from that experience, what did you change going forward? Reflecting on it, what went wrong? What could you have done differently? Could you have enhanced your collaboration skills as a group, things like that. So there's so many different ways that you can attack these two prompts.
Yep.
So this is just, I'll take this one, Courtney. This is just a quick plug for Math. If you're not familiar with Math, Math is our premier pre-med software that helps you track your whole process, including things like your secondary. So you can create an account. If you don't have one right now, you can create an account at math.com. Math is 99% free. There are some pro features that you can purchase for like $10 a month. But the application tracker is actually one of those free features where you can go in, you enter the school that you've applied to and track if you've submitted it, if you've received a secondary, if you've pre-written your secondary. Oops. I know some of you probably do this already through Excel sheets, but Math provides this as well. So you can check that out. And we are all experts here. We can help you if you like the feedback you're getting today and would like to potentially look into working with one of us. Feel free to check us out. This is our information here. We're at medicalschoolhq.net. Anything else you want to add to this, Courtney? Or
nope.
You get to work with one of us.
Yeah, I think secondaries and interviews both weigh very heavily and make a big difference. So if you think that you would benefit from some individual time, take that opportunity. I would say even more so like with interviews, but definitely with secondaries, just because if you are using one and you end up using it for 15 schools and it's really not as professionally written as one would hope, then you've just sent it to 15 schools. So if you need help, we are here. We're happy to give advice.
Same thing, kind of meet one-on-one with us. You can get information about our advising packages. And we also have a pre-med pathway, which is specifically designed for early pre-meds. So if you're just kind of starting out on this process, you can work with one of us as well.
Yep.
All right. So that is the end of our deck. Just take a quick peek. I know there's some questions in the chat. I don't know if there's any here that we can quickly answer so we can move on to what you all came for, which is secondary review.
Yeah, let's see.
A lot of questions about diversity. Okay.
Should we avoid discussing academics when answering this kind of question? Probably for the failure one.
Yes.
Should it be something else?
That depends on the prompt, right? If they're asking specifically a non-academic failure, then absolutely don't write about an academic failure. And some schools are very specific. If they're not being that specific, it really is a question of failure, right? So if it's just, oh, I failed the test, that's not really saying that you failed the entire course or what led to that failure. So think, unless it specifically says a non-academic failure, think big picture, not just one test, for instance, potentially a course.
I know a lot of the times when the questions about challenges come up, what's a challenge that you've experienced and stuff like that, people will talk about the MCAT. I think that is kind of general rule of thumb. Usually they'll even put in parentheses like not the MCAT. They want you to focus on something else, right? They have a lot of information on your MCAT and kind of look at what you've done and how many times you've taken it and things like that. So I would use the opportunity to provide them with additional insight that will help them see you a bit more broadly than just hyper focus and tailor all of the information into like this pinpoint where they're getting nothing. Like maybe a failure, if you've talked a lot about academics or struggles or something like that, then maybe it's a time that you failed to be a friend, a good friend, right? Because of something that went on or a conversation that was had, or so you can give them broader scope with a lot of these questions. They don't have to be so hyper focused. So will we be able to talk about ways to approach the question, what else would you like us to know? I think usually that comes up in interviews, but it may be anything else you want the AdCom to know about you or things like that. How would either of you ladies approach that?
So I've worked with students and I've recommended potentially writing, if they have not asked already, why you're interested in their school, what programs they have, or what the curriculum is like that matches what you're interested in and how you want to learn. That's a good opportunity there to talk about why their school. Or if there are inconsistencies in your academic record that you haven't had a chance to explain, that's also an opportunity to talk about that there. What about you, Dina?
I agree. If you are talking about why the school and programs that you're interested in, just like Verinia said, make sure that you're also addressing why it matches your own experience and your own history. Maybe there's, some sort of special research that's being conducted at this medical school that aligns with research you've done in the past. I don't think it's the opportunity to just say like, I really, really want to go here and it's my top choice school. It's not the platform for that. I think what else it could be anything that you haven't addressed. So if there wasn't, even if there wasn't like a COVID prompt and you really were disrupted by COVID academically, personally, and you want to discuss that, you can. Anything else about maybe your background that is not in your primary application, but just don't use it as a platform to beg and sound really desperate, because I've seen that before and it's just doesn't go well. It's protected real estate. All of the secondaries are like protected real estate in medical school admissions. So use the characters and the words wisely.
Yeah. So we did have some early on questions about that, like how can we show the school why we're interested in them? What types of things should we focus on for the why us questions and things? And it's really doing your research, like why did you apply there and what would you take advantage of and who will you be on campus and why do you think that the two of you would thrive together marrying yourself to the school? So it's really, we can be sounding boards on this, but you should know those things and be able to pull that information or at least research it on why you may want to go there and why them. So I would put that one back on you guys and think about that type of stuff for it.
So there is one question in the chat before we head into secondaries, just really quickly. So what if you get an invitation to fill out a secondary before your primary application is verified? What is the recommended timeline for filling it out? And this, I've noticed this has come up frequently this cycle. I've been telling students, you want to obviously complete it, make sure that it's, answers the prompts the way you want to, and then go ahead and submit it. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the first year where at least ACOMAS is doing that while you're going through the verification process. I haven't heard when I've spoken to all the deans and directors that their timeline is necessarily changing. They were just, wanting to connect with students earlier. So I would say if you're getting it, still try to turn it around quickly, but they're probably going to look at it once you've returned the secondary and have a verified application. So
Exactly. Yeah.
You may
All
have a
right.
little bit of flex room on that.
Okay. Any other thoughts to that, Dina?
No, I piggyback what Courtney said. I just keep in mind that, taking an overall look at all components of your application is important. So unless all components are there, they might not look at your application and evaluate it. But I would still get it in.
All right. So now we'll move into looking at some secondary submissions.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. All right. So let me just get this set
While you're
up.
pulling it up, so Sasha, do you have any tips to make sure diversity essay doesn't sound like overcoming adversity essay? I would say those are two very different things. Diversity, depending on what you want to focus on, if we're talking about culture, gender, orientation, race and ethnicity, that isn't inherently about overcoming adversity. So I'm not sure what it is about it that you're focusing on, and if you are assigning an adversity to something. So what do you guys think about that? Because I see them very differently, even though, some communities are very marginalized, and there are barriers and adversity that can kind of come along with it, but it's not a given.
I think Sasha added more information. A lot of marginalized identities face adversity for their diverse identity. So I guess maybe you yourself faced racism or discrimination in some way, or some kind of barriers to whatever it is based on that. You want to write about it authentically, but you also want to be careful that it's not coming across like you're kind of bitter and like challenging, accept that kind of say, I've had to deal with these things, but focus on how you were able, hopefully how you were able to overcome that, because that, so you're really writing an adversity essay, not really a diversity essay at that point.
Yeah.
Which is, like you were saying, Courtney, just completely different.
Yeah, because I mean, when I think about that, because I'm half Hispanic, I came from a very, very low socioeconomic standing and very diverse communities. But when I think about that, I think about the richness of like what I learned from interfacing with such a blended community and the things I'm really proud of with my heritage and stuff like that. So it can be positive. It doesn't have to just focus on all of these hurdles that were put in front of me that I had to overcome, because that's adversity. And yeah, some of them were related to, kind of the standings that I had growing up or circumstances. But there's also a lot of really positive things that you could focus on too, which I think is more of what I'm trying to get at. Diversity doesn't have to be a negative and doesn't have to just be about the challenges of being diverse. It could have a positive takeaway of a lot of really amazing aspects of it, whether, covering all of the topics of diversity. So I think that's why I'm pushing a little bit on why it would be challenging to not have it come across as an adversity essays, because you could change the tone and the focus.
It's a great point. Yeah. All right. Are we ready?
Yep.
All right. So I'm gonna share my screen here, and we'll start looking at some of your submissions. And what we'll do is we'll randomly pick some of your submissions, just kind of switch it up a little bit with prompts and character length. We'll have you all read these to yourselves. Can everyone see that? Good. All right. So the school name and prompt, and then the response underneath. Go ahead and read it, and then we'll take your feedback in the chat. Or yeah, I think that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Yeah,
And then we'll.
let's do it peer review style, I think, as long
Yeah.
as, Dina, are you okay with that? Where we'll ask for their
Yes.
takeaways, good, bad, otherwise,
Mhm.
something concrete, and then if we have interjections, I guess add those to it.
And then I guess after that, we can each give our own feedback. All right. So here we have University of Arizona College of Medicine in Phoenix. And I'll keep an eye on the chat as well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you can, when you're done reading, you can start putting your comments in the chat. What do we think? Did they answer the prompt? Good, bad? Suggestions for improvement? Make sure you switch your chat from host and panelist to everyone so everyone can see your comments. Okay. Karina says they think it's pretty strong, although the emphasis might be more on the second question. Sorry, on the first, then the second question, maybe increase the number of characters spent on the second question. Okay. What else? Is the last sentence too much of a stretch in regards to the story? I don't know. What do you all think? Is it?
I think the last sentence talks more about the future after medical school. And the second question in the prompt is, what aspect of this achievement will you bring to our medical school? So maybe translating that the dedication, the consistency, the mental and physical strength towards a medical education and the medical school, I think would be more positive to end with than something as I feel like providing the best possible care for patients requires unyielding dedication. It's more telling than showing.
Mhm.
Okay. I know we emphasize that a lot. The show don't tell. And there's ways to do that in your secondaries in a way that doesn't take away from answering the prompt. But I don't want students to get too hung up on that idea, because that happens sometimes, and then you end up in the weeds trying to show when you're really not answering the prompt.
Right.
So focus on answering the prompt. And some of them are just straightforward. You have to tell. There's no story to share. There's no reflection or anything like that. But I agree with you in this case, Dina. I think that the connection to what they're bringing to the medical school is what's kind of missing from here.
Missing
for me.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Anything else for this one? We can move on. All right.
Yep.
Let's move on. Let's do Kansas. This is okay. Give an example of what you've done to make your community a better place to live.
Okay.
Folks seem to like this one. Answer the question, provided numbers, showing impact through numbers. Yep. Connected to their own identity. Yep. Okay. Okay. I think in general, yeah, everyone thinks it's a good, strong one. I do. I agree. I like this one.
I do too.
I like that they connected, showed their connection to their own experiences and how that made them want to make things better for others that came after them, and improve their community, made it a better place. So great work with this one.
I liked that they didn't try to tie it back into the medical school. And
Yes.
this is something that I'm going to
Yeah.
do because that is not what's called for with this. You let it breathe on its own. You
Yes.
answered the prompt. You gave examples. Good.
Exactly. Yep. Don't have to tie it back to medicine unless they specifically ask. Okay. Let's try. Okay, some of these are a little too long. Oh, here's one on challenges. So this is Albany Medical College. Describe a significant challenge that has prepared you for the MD career path. Type your feedback in the chat.
I'm over here doing calculations on how many hours you can actually work per week. That seems
A little
excessive. It
Mm.
seems excessive. I mean, maybe they're accurate, but let's see. 24/7, 168 total, right? Of all that can be worked. So you're saying if it was, let's go to the high side, 120, you had 48 hours of sleep, eat, shower, commuting, everything else? That doesn't seem accurate. It seems aggrandized to me. But maybe not. Maybe I'm jaded, but I'm going to think that as an evaluator. Just so you know, I pulled out my calculator.
Yeah, I mean, 17-hour, 18-hour days seems a bit excessive. But who knows? I would just double check that. What about the idea of the challenge was kind of working in healthcare? How do you think that comes across? Yay, nay. I don't know, I'm on the fence about this one.
Yeah, to me, I mean, it's a fine answer. Is it like the strongest answer? No. In my personal opinion, am I gonna like rule this person out because of it? Maybe not. I would kind of look at the other content and stuff. I'm okay with it being related to medicine. It comes across a little bit silly, like I worked this hard and this many hours, and I was the one bridging the language gap, which is written kind of awkwardly, although my fluency in English bridged some of the gaps, but you were in India, so maybe saying that your fluency with the language they speak and translating for the medical team would have made more sense. So
Right.
it looks, I don't know. It's an average answer, I would say.
Someone in the chat said that they feel like the challenge was just doing a lot of work. That it
Working
wasn't very
hard.
specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that more focus on what the challenge was.
Yeah.
For example, like when it says this trip was an immensely challenging yet transformative experience. Why? Were you pushed outside of your comfort zone? Were you exposed to, you know, just a different environment that you were not used to, that you felt uncomfortable in, and that comfort level had to grow over time? Yeah.
I agree. I think that's a good point. Otherwise, you're going to come across like you don't like to work really hard. And one thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn this one red because I realize I haven't been doing that like we do in Academy with the others. All right, so we'll move on. Okay, here's one about identity. University of Alabama.
No, this one is the character limit 750.
That's not, we're not sure. Could be 750
Okay.
words. Could
Okay.
be, it's
So it's at
definitely not
10:59.
750 words. Yeah, good point.
Okay.
So
It's
we'll
probably
read it.
characters.
Right. So you're already over the limit there.
By quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's 750 characters.
Characters.
So
Okay. So yeah. So you're gonna have to cut this one down quite a bit. I think this one's a good example for like what not to do, kind of for the wrong reason. Number one being you're over the character limit already. But I want to hear from students here on the here in the workshop. Did they answer the prompt? Yeah. Yeah, I got some great responses in the chat. They didn't really answer the prompt. Amina says, I think this focuses more on what you want to do rather than how it would specifically impact your future interactions. Yeah. Yeah, this is very much the things you want to accomplish, the things you want to do, but you never really talked about how your identity impacted your values.
I didn't get any of this person's identity. Obviously, you know, having to witness family members overcome disease may be, I guess, a part of your identity. It may just be stuff that you went through, but yeah, I don't really feel like this person's hitting on describe how your identity has impacted.
Yeah.
I agree. And I was a little confused in the beginning because like being from a rural community, you have a lot to offer in terms of maybe what you observed with access to healthcare. So you mentioned a rural community, but then you say you witnessed diseases overcome family members, and well, doesn't everybody kind of have that, right? Everybody's experienced some sort of disease with family members. So why is that tied to rural community? It didn't tie together to me. And yeah, I didn't see the identity in this.
And with 750 characters, there's not much wiggle room to deviate from the prompt and still answer, especially if there's two parts of it. So this one needs to be workshopped a little bit to kind of better address the two portions of the prompt a bit more clearly, because if we're in this gray area where we're like, did it answer? Well, I don't know, sort of this part, but not this part. That's never where you want to be. That's not not what you want the evaluator to be doing. So I think address it a bit more head on. That would be helpful.
And stick to the character limit.
Or else you're just going to have a sentence that just ends, and that never looks good either.
Chopped off. All right. All right. See, this doesn't say if it's words or characters, so I'm going to assume characters. I don't know. I don't know.
Probably not with that.
Probably not. This one's 250 words. All right. So let's keep going. All right. This is diversity. We did it. Did we do it? Yes, we did. How do you? All right, let's do this. University of Michigan. How do you hope to impact medicine in the future? Do not exceed 1,500 characters. Okay.
Okay.
Well, this one says if examples are needed, refer to the 7 paths of excellence, which I don't know off the top of my head what they are.
I'll put them in the chat box.
Okay. But at the end of the day, you're answering, how do you hope to impact medicine in the future? Is it through one of those 7 paths of excellence or in any way? That's what I'm not sure about.
I just put them in.
Okay, well, okay. So this is an example potentially of global health and disparities through that path of excellence. Got it. Okay. Okay.
I thought it was worded in a way that was pretty organic, right? It was believable in the way this person spoke of kind of their lived experience and how they want to impact people and medicine in the future, and kind of how they've grown to realize it's beyond just their home country, and can be broader than that. So very altruistic kind of take on things. And as long as I'm a school that has, pathways for producing global health physicians, I think this is a good answer.
Okay. Someone asked about the name drop. Dr. Paul Farmer is well known in public health circles. I don't know if everyone knows who Dr. Paul Farmer is, but I didn't have a problem with it because they said this is a global health physician. So that's okay. I don't know. Dina, do you think that's an issue?
I don't think it's an issue, but not everyone may know who it
Right.
is.
I didn't know.
Okay. And I said public health, I meant global health. But yeah, that's a good example right here. I may know who Dr. Farmer is, but not everyone on the committee might. So maybe just say something like seeing other inspiring doctors save lives or something like that. Don't necessarily focus on one.
I don't mind the specific
Don't mind
call
it?
out. Like if I wanted to look into it to see if it was an alum or
Mm.
somebody broader than that, I could do it. Like it's just me being lazy. So I
Yeah,
think if
it's not
this
taken
is
away.
somebody that really inspires you, I think the call out is okay.
Yeah. It's not taking away from your response in any way.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great
Good job.
feedback, everyone. All right.
Good
We'll
job. Good
just
job.
keep going through that. Say again. Courtney, did you
But
say something?
no, I said good job, but
Oh,
I did want to say, like, as we kind of go through these, it's nice to see in the chat,
mhm.
you guys are able to pull, like when you're reading somebody else's, you're pulling on the same things that we're pulling on, right? If you're like, this one's a bit off, yep, it's easy to
Yeah.
call. So just think about reading thousands of these things, the same prompts over and over. Yeah, it starts becoming easy to call good, better, best answers. And if they're deviating from the prompt, or it's not very strong, or it's like it's lacking depth, or it's not really tied to things, you guys call it out just in giving it a quick read through. We're going to do the same. So when you're looking at your own writing, it may be difficult to do, but try to look at it through this same lens, because you guys are picking up on the same things that we are. So that's good as a collective. To let's see if we can kind of keep on that where we haven't been really at odds.
Karina asked.
Karina, yeah, I was just going to address that question.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Dina.
Yeah, Karina asked a really good question in the chat box and asked, suddenly have a random question. Who is my reader? Is it a mix of physicians and non-clinical admissions people? And that is a really good question, because it is not just one person reading your application. It takes a village, I will say that. And most medical schools have readers, external readers who they train to help read applications. And usually those are affiliated with their academic medicine program or their hospitals. So they're physicians, or they are professors in the medical school who are familiar with the medical school, so they could be reading. It could be an admissions officer. When I was in admissions, I read applications. It could be alumni. Some schools put those jobs out there for external readers. So it usually is somebody who definitely has experience and who's seen medical school applications before and knows, what the healthcare and medical world is about. But you don't know. You just don't know.
When I was at Hofstra, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
When I was at Hofstra, I would volunteer to interview candidates. So it's not obviously not reading, but still same idea. I don't have a medical background, so it's important to know that when you're interviewing, you can relate to anyone on that admissions committee, or when you're writing, anyone can connect with your writing, even if they don't necessarily have a medical background, which is why we emphasize, try to, not write about your research in such scientific forms that it's going to go way over my head because I don't have that medical background.
Yeah.
Same thing with your interviews. Go ahead, Courtney.
No, I think it ties to kind of that social awareness of, if you go into a conversation and you can't talk to somebody just like off the street and tailor the conversation to meet that need, you're going to have a hard time with bedside manner, right? Because you really need to be able to be a chameleon of sorts and adapt to that. And so knowing that there may be any number of people with any number of different understandings, bring it to a level of kind of, right, like using the lay terms. You're not trying to sell us on like how smart you are and things like that. We've got your academic records, like in every nitty gritty detail, we can see it. But it's not just about being smart. It's also having good communication skills and some social awareness and things like that. And so, as you're writing, just keep that in mind. You don't have to go overboard or use crazy terms or anything like that, because it's not needed and it's not going to hurt your application in any way. So.
All right, so I scrolled down here. This is a challenge one because I was trying to see if I could find one. Again, not sure if the limit is 300 words or characters. I'm going to say words, but
yeah.
Here's the response. So the question is, tell us about a time when you were faced with a challenge in the areas of personal responsibility and adaptability specifically, and how that challenge impacted your professional growth. So this one, important to read the prompt very carefully. I love that the chat is lighting up with feedback. Okay. Okay, feels negative to the student, needs to spin to more growth. Okay.
So I'm aligned with where the chat is kind of going. There's a story in there of I can understand it was embarrassed and the imposter syndrome. I think you are certainly not alone in feeling that. I'm curious as to the adaptability portion and kind of impacting your personal growth. I would like to see a bit more of the character count kind of shifted to do that. Yeah, and quarter, you're right. Last quarter.
Yeah, proofread. The importance of proofreading.
Grammarly, it's free.
Although with this one, quart is an actual like correctly spelled word. So this is one of those things that you need a human being to read it. Although Grammarly actually, I don't know if Grammarly would pick that up. That it's the wrong word.
Yeah, maybe not.
All right, should we move on? Okay. Keep going. Thank you all for your feedback. I'm trying to see, kind of mix up the prompts. Okay. So I don't know what the limit is on this.
Oof.
Again, I don't know if this is words or characters. I don't know the school secondary off the top of my head.
Either one, it's way over.
But either way, yeah, you need to work on that. I'm glad we actually scrolled through that.
Oof.
That's a lot. There's a lot going on there. Okay.
Can we find a why? Can we find a why us one? They were asking if we could find.
Oh, perfect. Cat. All right, not too bad. So this is, tell us about your special interest in the clinical campus you selected. So not really us, well, us, but specifically that campus. Okay. Yes, Emerson, the cow.
Okay.
Yeah. What do we think?
Um, yeah, I'm not completely, oh, am I muted? No, okay.
No.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm reading the comments and I'm not sure about the my people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because just don't assume
Yeah.
that anyone reading this is going to remember anything about, like, from your primary. So, if you mentioned a certain background that you're from or how you grew up, I just think just come out and say what kind of people. And I also think I liked this a lot, particularly because the author is an alum from this institution, and so obviously really knows the community. When I first started reading this, I was like, oh, I wonder if they've addressed the Philadelphia community. And I actually really liked it. I normally guide students away from the sentences like it will be my dream, and I wholeheartedly believe I belong. But I kind of feel like I got it. Like, I understood why you said it, because this is your community and this is where you were educated. But I don't know how everyone else feels about that. But I liked this one a lot.
I agree with you. I kind of picked up on the same things where it was like my people or my community needs and kind of that ownership of it. I'm not totally sure how I feel about that. The one sentence that for some reason just kind of stood out to me as like, well, that was lackluster, is I trust that I will become a well-versed and competent physician with the dynamics to treat and help numerous patients from all cultures. Like, what a dry statement. Like, a
Yeah, I
well-versed and
agree.
competent physician to help numerous patients. It While the rest was tailored and had some oomph behind it, this just kind of fell a bit flat in comparison. So I wasn't really loving that statement. Obviously, am I going to look at it under like a magnifying glass? Maybe not. In the scheme of things, it's just a sentence, but I just wanted to call it out because, if your goal is to just become a competent physician to help numerous people, like, ooh, bummer, like, that's dry. So
it's a little generic. I agree.
Yeah.
And the my people to me kind of like made it seem like only you are qualified to treat this population. That's how I read it.
The ownership, yeah.
The ownership. So this student has the advantage of being an alum, so they know the school very well. But for anyone who doesn't have that same connection, the Why Us is your opportunity to show the medical school that you have done the research and you understand what they offer. Be very specific, like this student has done. What are the programs that you're interested in that they offer? How do they tie into your mission and goals in medicine and what you want to accomplish? That's how you come across without, you know, sounding so generic, right? So it's a little harder to do that if you don't know the school very well. So you really have to do your research, listen to podcasts about the school, what's out there, check out their social media, their student pages to understand what the school has to offer. So you can definitely show that, you know, have that message come across.
If you guys really want to get into the weeds, you can find the student handbook that are published that you sign off on when you become a student, that pretty much the lay of the land of how curriculum is run, services, you know, if you start struggling, kind of what the process is for that, how you sit for boards and stuff. So again, it's a handbook, so it's meaty material, but you can Control F through that and see, would you actually like to be a student there based on the things that they have available. So look under student engagement and student affairs, but again, that's a little
insider knowledge there.
a little deep secret there you can look for if you want.
Insider knowledge. All right, so we're at about almost 3:20. I know that there's questions. I think we'll stop here and maybe have some time for Q&A. I'll manage the chat. I don't know if folks want to raise their hand and unmute. We'll be happy to answer some questions as well for the next couple of minutes. So just go ahead and use the raise hand.
They can be general questions, or if you have a question about a prompt, an idea, can be sounding boards for that too. So it's fairly open-ended.
All right, Tessa, go ahead and allow to talk.
Hey, so
hello.
I actually have a question on one of the comments from the last one that we read. So you had mentioned that one expression that was kind of like an encompassing expression was kind of dry. Would it be less dry if they had took out the word competent in there and was just like, I'm trying to be a well-rounded physician that can treat a diverse amount of patients? Or is it still kind of just dry to have some of those generic summary sentences?
I think it depends on what purpose it's trying to serve. Like if it's just a way to kind of wrap things up, you were hyper specific. Sorry, my fiance some. So if you were specific to the rest of it and you're just kind of trying to wrap it up, that's okay. And yes, I would remove the competent and numerous patients. So rewording and kind of finessing it a little bit is the way to go. Yeah.
Okay.
You can still have some of those statements. It's just there needs to be a purpose for them, and wording will matter.
Awesome.
Or
Thank you, guys.
Let's
Phrasing will,
see, before I get to Karen, there's a question. Can we leave an optional question blank if we don't know what to write about? What do we think about that?
I mean, obviously, it always depends on what it is. However, optional always means not optional. You know, I just think that if somebody had 10 applications in front of them and 9 applicants answered the optional question and the 10th did not, then it really makes you stick out. So I also think it's a test of critical thinking and trying to figure out a way to answer it. So not answering it to me is a negative.
Yeah.
Unless it's something that's super specific, you know, like if you grew up in a rural community. Please elaborate on that. And if not, you know, don't. I just, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Courtney, what do you think?
I'm the same. I mean, my mind immediately went like, well, if you don't qualify, don't falsify or like try to come up with something to fit it. If you truly don't qualify for it, that's fine. But if it's just asking for broader information or like a challenge question or tell us about yourself, describe something to us. It's an effort thing, and I would say I would take a moment to get something down for that. Yep.
I've seen some prompts that will say, yes, this is really optional. And it's a very specific question at that point. So then yes, it is optional. But I agree with Courtney and Dina that those are opportunities for you to show more of who you are. And like you were saying, Dina, if someone else completed it and you don't, then it's not gonna look great.
Yeah.
Think of it as more opportunities to talk about yourself, to write about yourself. All right, so Karen or Corinne, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it.
Oh no, yeah, you're good. Thank you so much. It's Karin, by the way.
Karin.
Yeah, no worries.
Karin.
No, you're good. I have a specific question about a prompt. Like, I just want to understand I just want to see if I'm understanding what they're really trying to get at, I guess. Like, I think I know. So it says, describe your competency by explaining how you have come or how you have explored and come to understand issues in the social sciences and humanities as they relate to the practice of medicine. And so I think it's like asking like kind of like health disparities, like social determinants of health and stuff like that. And there's like been a couple patients stories that I kind of have running through my brain, particularly with this question. So I was wondering if like that would be a good thing to touch on. Also, I'm reading this book called Health Disparities in the United States by Donald Barr. I don't know if that like would be, just because it says like describe your competencies. I'm like, so even if I'm just like, talking with a patient, how does that like, and I'm seeing like, oh yeah, they're going through this like social determinants of health, or they have this like health disparity or whatever. How am I demonstrating my competency? By just like, I don't know if that makes sense.
I feel like I need to hear the prompt again.
Yeah, no, I know it's a heavy one. Gosh, yeah. So it says describe your competency by explaining how you have explored and come to understand issues in the social sciences and humanities as they relate to the practice of medicine.
Yeah, so that there's external factors that impact health outside of just maybe physical or scientific things would kind of be, I think, the topic. How many characters do you get, or how many words?
250 word limit.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know.
that's it.
I guess I would maybe write about maybe not sharing the stories because you won't have the word count for it. Yeah. But yeah, if you have worked in clinic or had experiences with patients that were facing a lot of challenges outside, I would maybe pull in some of those areas and kind of at least make nods to what those things are so that I know you understand what we're talking about. I think you could mention the book if you wanted to, like knowing that I'm going to be a physician and my goal is to work in an underserved area, or whatever it is your goal is. I wanted to take steps to, I know that there's more to learn on this, and so I'm reading this book, really enjoy it, blah blah blah.
Okay. And I didn't know, like, I just wanted to ask specifically if I was like okay to like say that, you know what I mean? Just like, or to like say, I am taking steps to like understand that. Yeah, because my thing is like I'm interested in like rural served like under areas, especially in Montana. So, but yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Do you want to share what school that is? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It's University of Washington.
Vocabulary quiz.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
It's for the University of Washington.
Okay. Oh, they're
Yeah.
very
Yeah,
very like
program.
region focused.
Rural. Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we have time for one more question. Victoria. Victoria, if you're speaking, you're muted.
Hey, so sorry. I just
It's
wanted to
okay.
ask, I have a school that wants us to submit like a whole nother personal statement. And I was wondering what I should focus on in this one, because I feel like I told my story pretty, I guess, I don't know. I feel like I told my story in the first one.
Is it UC San Diego?
No, it's Toro, DO school.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
UC San Diego has the please give us a autobiography.
Yeah, the autobiography question.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the prompt specifically?
I will tell you right now. Just give me 2 seconds.
It is really funny kind of being on this side of it now, because I remember creating prompts for secondaries with a purpose of trying to glean, mission fit, look for certain qualities, see if somebody's been tested with like challenge or overcome something that was really hard, because medical school is going to be really hard. But then when you're on this other side, a lot of the questions are geared towards things like that. And then you're like, wow, we only talk about negative stuff. Like all of these questions are about times you've been tested or tried or struggled, or, are you a judgmental person, right? And so while the questions have a purpose and I understand it from that side, it's different when you have to write it. And you're like, wow, I'm really only talking about kind of challenges or negative things or reiterating information I already kind of provided. It's weird to have that.
I actually never thought about that, but that's really true.
Yeah.
This one says the instructions, this personal statement is different than the essay that has been submitted from your Commerce application in no more than 3 paragraphs that will fit on this single page. If the essay creates a second page, it's too long. Please discuss how your background experience or academic program has prepared you for meeting Toro College of Osteopathic Medicine's goal, objective, and mission.
That's a little different than a personal statement. I mean, at the end of the day, it's why medicine, but it's still very specific to their school.
It's kind of a why us a little bit.
Yeah, I know. It says personal statement. That's why I initially thought that it was just personal statement. But,
got it.
But yeah.
Yeah, so that's how you approach it. Focus on the school. What are the things about the school that appeal to you and your mission and your goals as a physician, and how they're going to help you achieve that?
Yeah. What things have you done?
Mm-hmm.
How do they tie in?
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Courtney, you want to take us out? You want?
Sure.
You're our moderator. You're our
know.
moderator.
I know, but it's a shared throne. When our godfather, Dr. Gray, is not around, I guess we all share in kind of running these sessions.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for attending. We know you're in the thick of it. Really just chip away at it, reuse what you can when appropriate, but tailor it to the school. If you need help, we are always here to help you, obviously. We have that advisor chat through Match Pro. We've got sessions. We'll have more workshops and things like that. Once you start getting in secondaries, you need to immediately start prepping for interviews, because you never know how much advance notice you're going to get. So don't sit on that. Good luck.
Bye,
We'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.